and it even has a finer texture than the other varieties.
Progress, but no breakthrough.
There were constructive talks, but this remains a difficult process.
The run on the toy stores this day before the day before Christmas. The stunning reversal of corruption convictions against 3 LAPD officers. And America's poorest seaports, stolen goods and illegal drugs moving freely.
I'm responsible for at least about 200 million in cocaine smuggled through the port of Miami.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News, reported by John Siegenthaler.
Good evening, everyone. We begin with the hopes for peace in the Middle East. As President Clinton works through his final days in office, White House officials say tonight he is still hoping to help broker an agreement. But after 5 days of talks in Washington, Israeli and Palestinian negotiators were unable to overcome their differences. NBC's John Palmer is at the White House tonight. Good evening, John.
Good evening, John. Israeli and Palestinian negotiators did fail to reach agreement, but they kept the door open for a possible summit before President Clinton leaves office next month. The two delegations arrived at the White House after 4 days of intense negotiations at a nearby military base. President Clinton had hoped today's meeting would lay the groundwork for a summit. But after about an hour, the Palestinian team said difficulties remain in all major areas.
There are differences on refugees, there are differences in Jerusalem, there are differences in security, and there are differences in territorial issues.
The Israeli delegation was a bit more optimistic.
Differences remain. But I feel that it was a very encouraging round of talks. We will go back to report to the leaders.
But PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat, visiting Jordan's King Abdullah today, said he will make no concessions on the right of Palestinian refugees who fled their homes to return. Another key question, establishing borders between Israel and a Palestinian state, and the paramount issue, the sovereignty of Jerusalem.
Both sides see an urgency. Both Israel and the Palestinians actually want an agreement. Despite all of the escalation and the violence, they want an agreement.
President Clinton wants to host another signing ceremony like this one between Israel and Jordan, but last summer's Camp David summit between Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Barak collapsed. And that failure was followed by another summit that failed to stop the violence that has now claimed more than 300 lives. The White House said the president offered specific ideas today, but the burden remains on the two sides.
I think the president is determined to reach an agreement if the parties can see their way forward.
And if the president's ideas are accepted by both sides, sources say that Mr. Clinton will invite Barak and Arafat to the United States for separate talks within a week's time. John?
NBC's John Palmer at the White House. John, thank you. Now to Yugoslavia, where pro-democracy forces claim victory in Serbia's parliamentary election today. But as NBC's Jim Macedo reports, UN peacekeepers still face a difficult mission.
For many Serbs, it's a first, a free and fair election, a parliamentary vote without controversy or violence. The kind of change promised by Yugoslavia's new democratic leader, Vojislav Koštunica, after the former strongman, Slobodan Milosevic, fell in a popular insurrection.
He said, what we want is a new, normal, boring country which will lead a normal life.
With over 70% of the polls, victory by the democratic opposition is assured. So is the defeat of Milosevic's party, his last power base. But he may retain a seat in parliament, which could give the indicted war criminal immunity from prosecution. Milosevic may be down, but not necessarily out.
He still has considerable wealth. He still has a lot of supporters. One doesn't know how loyal the Yugoslav army is to President Koštunica.
His latest test is Kosovo, the Serbian province under UN control since last year's NATO air assault drove Serb forces out. Now, hundreds of heavily armed ethnic Albanian rebels are seeking independence from Serbia, crossing from Kosovo into a 3-mile-wide no-man's land inside Serbia, meant to separate Serb soldiers from NATO, including U.S. peacekeepers. In recent days, the rebels have attacked villages there, killing 4 Serb policemen and provoking counterattacks by Serb police. So far, the Yugoslav army has shown restraint, following Koštunica's orders not to trigger a war. U.S. peacekeepers are raising their profile and sending a signal, trying to prevent the Kosovar rebels from annexing Serb land.
It's not going to be permitted. these 300 or so people may be very serious about what they're doing, and they may be saying they're protecting their families, but they're certainly not going to change the boundaries.
But the fear remains that Kostunica may have to send in his army as a show of strength, with U.S. troops caught in the middle.
The danger is that NATO will again be sucked into another Balkan war.
Despite clear signs of progress, like this smooth Serb election, Kosovo remains a dangerous place, and with no end in sight for the U.S. mission. Jim Maceda, NBC News.
For much of this country today, gray skies, frigid temperatures, and frazzled last-minute shoppers. More on all of that from NBC's Hillary Lane.
An urban ice pack, a parking lot frozen solid after a water main exploded today in Detroit. An example of how temperatures well below normal have put a chill on the holiday weekend. Across the Midwest, turning ventures outside into creative exercises in keeping warm. Milwaukee, already blanketed by snow, got another 3 inches today. In Washington, D.C., temperatures 17 degrees below normal encouraged tourists to keep moving. But in Chicago, snow and bitter cold mean many people are stuck. Travelers into, out of, and through O'Hare Airport, one of the nation's busiest, delayed, though most for less than 2 hours. Mike Lewis is bound for Acapulco, and despite the below-zero wind chill, already looks the part.
Well, it's warm in Chicago. It's the first day it's been above zero all week.
Why the brutal cold? So much worse than last year. A dip in the jet stream is forcing Arctic air further south. Weather that kept many shoppers at home until now. Final frenzy time. At KB Toys in Jersey City, New Jersey, stockroom workers frantically unpacked boxes to get newly arrived merchandise onto empty in-store shelves. But many last-minute shoppers, like Karen Sesko, have something specific in mind. In her case, it's the Leap Pad Learning Center, a must-have for her 6-year-old son.
I'm so bad at it.
You're going to go that way. Okay, now where do I get one? I went to Toys R Us. Everyone's like, Rally's came, nothing.
Determined but not discouraged, her search continued.
The lines at toy stores are long today because many of the recipients of these gifts fully expect Santa to deliver them Monday morning. Hillary Lane, NBC News, Jersey City, New Jersey.
And a holiday warning tonight for computer owners. A virus called W32.Criz is set to go off on Christmas Day, rendering systems inoperative. Consumers are advised to run their antiviral programs for protection. More information is available on our website, msnbc.com. Check goofs and glitches in the technology section. When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, why a judge in Los Angeles threw out the guilty verdicts in a police corruption case. And later, in focus, plugging the security holes at America's seaports.
This holiday, you can give them a computer or a one-of-a-kind Gateway Essential PC with everything they're into built into it. Get a Gateway Essential PC with an Intel Celeron processor for just $799. Then turn it into a jukebox or video arcade. Call 1-800-GATEWAY and give your one-of-a-kind. A one-of-a-kind. In Gateway Country, people rule.
Do you dread washing your car? The soap and the rubbing and scrubbing and reaching? There's a better way with the Simonized Detailer's Brushless Car Wash System. The incredible new system with the soft touch of a brushless wash and the sheer force of a power sprayer. Simply add car wash concentrate, turn on the hose, and let the Simonized Soft Touch Power Pad do all the dirty work without damaging your car's finish. The Simonized Detailer's Brushless Car Wash System is only $19.95, and it's only from Simonized, America's most trusted name in car care products since 1911. Order now and we'll include the long arm extension for those hard-to-reach areas, truck beds, even the RV. And you'll get the bug and tire brush for wheels, headlights, grills, and other projects around the home. And as an added double bonus, we'll include Simonized Car Wash Concentrate and the amazing Surge Sprayer that turns any garden hose into a high-pressure wash. The entire system of $50 value is yours for just $19.95. Satisfaction guaranteed. Operators are standing by. Order the Simonized Detailer's Brushless Car Wash System. Call now.
To Los Angeles now, and an unexpected turn in a police corruption scandal. 3 guilty verdicts were overturned because of jury misconduct. Here's NBC's Colleen Dominguez.
In a written ruling, Judge Jacqueline Connor, who presided over the case,
threw out the convictions of 3 Los Angeles police officers found guilty of conspiracy, calling the verdicts unfair. Acknowledging what she described as the enormous pressure on the community to fix the Rampart scandal, the worst case of police corruption in this city's history, the judge went on to say, in this case, the evidence of misconduct appears to be strong. The ruling says the misconduct was enough to deprive the defendants of their right to a fair trial. It was just last month that Sergeants Edward Ortiz and Brian Liddy, along with Officer Michael Buchanan, became the first members of a now disbanded anti-gang unit to be tried and convicted. The star witness, former LAPD officer Rafael Perez, who testified that officers routinely framed, robbed, and sometimes even shot innocent people in the tough gang neighborhood they patrolled. The district attorney's office is calling the judge's decision disappointing.
We presented a case, we presented evidence, we argued that evidence to the jury returned a conviction, the judge saw it otherwise.
Attorney Barry Levin represented one of the officers.
These officers were innocent. There was always insufficient evidence. There was really no evidence at all to conclude that they were guilty of any crime.
A hearing to determine if there will be a retrial is scheduled for next month. Meanwhile, the 3 officers remain off duty without pay. Colleen Dominguez, NBC News, Los Angeles.
In Sweden today, police are searching for the thieves who stole 3 paintings worth millions of dollars. It happened at the National Museum when the crooks, armed with a machine gun, snatched a Rembrandt self-portrait along with 2 paintings by Renoir off the wall. The paintings were not insured. The thieves escaped from the Waterfront Museum by boat. From the U.S. government, word today of a $1 billion grant to help the homeless and a new initiative concerning public housing. HUD officials have been told to make racial diversity a high priority. The goal, one official said, is to make the public housing system a model of integration for the nation. And this brief program note, a year 2000 review and a 2001 preview will be the focus tomorrow on NBC's Meet the Press. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, presidential historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, and retiring Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan are among Tim Russert's guests. And when we continue, the crime wave at America's seaports.
I've got this life philosophy. When you get thrown, you get right back up. That's why I took control with Depend protective underwear. Just like regular, same soft feet.
Celebrity Santa, Sunday on Today.
In focus this evening, an up-close look at one front in the war on drugs where the traffickers are winning. Ike Siemens has the story.
The nation's seaports, soft spots in America's security. At many ports, authorities say, drug smuggling, crime, and greed are rampant.
It's so sinister. People get killed in this business. They not only threaten, they murder.
According to a federal commission on crime and security at U.S. seaports, over $6 billion in cargo passing through the ports is stolen each year. 200,000 stolen cars are illegally exported for sale overseas. The biggest concern, tons of drugs pouring into this country. The Office of Drug Control estimates half of all the cocaine smuggled into the United States comes through Florida ports, along with large quantities of heroin and marijuana.
They obviously cut the bulbs.
Boxes of garlic inside this container cover up a shipment of marijuana found at the Port of Miami. 39 burlap bags, 3,200 pounds of marijuana. U.S. Customs inspectors say they're on the front lines of a losing battle. With only 2,000 agents to inspect the 5 million containers that moved through U.S. ports last year, less than 2% of all cargo was inspected. Yet, the federal government has no comprehensive strategy to fight drug smuggling or crime on the nation's docks. State and local governments operate the ports. The Port of Miami's main gate.
How you doing? Going over to customs. Yeah, going to customs. Thank you.
No one asked me who I was. Nobody asked for any IDs. So I just rolled on in. And right in front of me, the restricted area.
We've got complete access.
Access which can be abused. Law enforcement officials say workers or anybody who can get into the docks can drive their own cars into restricted areas like this, where they could be quickly loaded with drugs and taken off the port without being checked. We weren't checked either when we left. Here's a checkpoint, but doesn't seem to be anybody here.
We know that most of the drugs that come in through the ports involve some type of collusion between individuals. Someone has to get those narcotics off the port.
Like these dock workers who were caught on hidden camera by the Customs Service. It took only 10 seconds to grab this drug shipment out of a cargo container. They were later convicted.
By and large, most of the drug smuggling is internal.
So we're talking about port employees, longshoremen, maybe teamsters, security guards, all this type of people?
All of the above.
I'm responsible for at least about 200 million in cocaine smuggled through the Port of Miami.
This man, now under arrest and cooperating with the Drug Enforcement Administration, worked on the Miami docks as a longshoreman.
We checked nearly 1,300 members of the Longshoremen's Unions listed in port records. We found that nearly 1 in 5 are convicted felons in Florida.
Florida drug czar Jim McDonough says there's a direct connection between crime on the docks and those with criminal records who work at the ports.
We need to have cameras, we need to have fences, we need to have controlled access, we need to have ID cards, we need to have background checks on workers that are valid and are meaningful.
Unions representing seaport workers say they are also concerned about rampant crime on the nation's docks, but feel many of their members are unfairly targeted.
These people are entitled to a break. And if these people work hard, these people do their job, the mere fact that they made a mistake up to 5 years ago and have served their time should not preclude them from working at the port.
Fear of crime and concern about terrorism have led to calls by Congress and a presidential commission to tighten port security. But no matter what authorities do, the smuggling won't stop, says the DEA's informant. The lure of money, big money, is too great.
Once you leave, there's someone there always to follow your footsteps. Once you get a piece of that pie, it's hard to turn away.
But officials believe tougher rules would make that piece of the pie shrink. Ike Siemens, NBC News, Miami.
Coming up next, what they're learning from trees in Southern California.
Oh. Can't sleep, honey? What's the matter? Oh, heartburn. I know just what you need.
Introducing new Alka-Seltzer Heartburn Relief. Faster than Pepcid, Zantac, or even the leading prescription. Alka-Seltzer Heartburn Relief. Cool, effervescent, specially formulated to put out the fire of heartburn fast.
Better, dear.
New Alka-Seltzer Heartburn Relief. Nothing puts out the fire faster.
You choose to be healthy. You choose to be successful. You choose to give back. You choose to be yourself. The choices you want, the voice you need to make the most out of life. Today's AARP.
Here's the second set of keys. You enjoy your new house, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, Carol. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
I'm just leaving the Harris house.
And what about the gifts for our office party?
I'm heading there now. With hundreds of gift ideas at
A river runs dry in Bakersfield, California. Rain that would normally fill it, nowhere in sight. December 2000, anything but normal.
Somewhere between about 30 and 50% below what our average precipitation should be right now. So it's dry.
Very, very high fire danger, extremely dry, 9% relative humidity in downtown Los Angeles.
Southern California this week, windy, dry, and hot. Even though fire season is over, conditions were right for 2 small wildfires to get out of control. So what's behind this weather pattern? Experts say the jet stream has stayed far to the north. Storms have missed us, and perhaps this is the start of something much bigger.
They're like rain gauges.
At the University of California, professor and researcher Glenn McDonald has been studying trees to learn about the weather, gathering a history on rain and moisture from the rings. What he sees looming, an extended dry period, 10 years or more.
We might not even get our most severe drought, but we would expect a higher potential for annual droughts and for multi-annual droughts, and generally decreased amounts of precipitation even in the good years.
No one is saying there's a drought now. Rain over the next 2 months could substantially improve conditions, but there are concerns about the future. Near Bakersfield, where there has been no significant rainfall since last spring, Farmer and Water Agency President Fred Starr is hoping for a break.
We suffered through the drought in 1991, and we actually had to shut down about 200,000 acres of land. We're hoping that will not be repeated.
This time, more cities and counties are planning for problems, building groundwater banks to draw from if needed. But they'd rather not.
The ideal situation at this point would be several big storms coming in real soon to relieve our anxiety of this year.
A holiday wish wrapped not in pretty paper, but dark clouds. Dan Lothian, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And a passing to note this evening. Victor Borge, a skilled pianist who played it for laughs, died today at his home in Greenwich, Connecticut. Born in Copenhagen and dubbed the Clown Prince of Denmark, Borge's whimsical approach to classical music won the hearts of audiences around the world. Victor Borge was 91. When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, the senior freshmen at Eureka College.
Now in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, these seniors are college freshmen and now authors of their own life stories.
Over a long lifetime, you have a lot of things to write about.
Writing memoirs, English professor Kathy Whitson at Eureka College in Central Illinois, Ronald Reagan's alma mater, now pairing her youngest students with residents of a local retirement community.
We want them to have opportunities to reach out and know people other than their own age mates.
Just curious. We're learning an enormous amount about each other, about aging and about life.
In this class, the learning is not just in school. It's life study. Students young and old sharing daily routines. For the seniors, an overnight visit to the dorms. For the freshmen, twice weekly visits to Maple Lawn Homes, where they did not just write with the seniors, they dined with them and learned firsthand about some of the everyday challenges of aging.
It's taking you a lot longer than just quickly putting your shoes on and getting ready, isn't it?
18-year-old Anne-Marie Moss paired with 72-year-old Lillian Crew.
Great Depression or World War II, instead of just reading about it, you get to hear the first-hand stories.
We're not here in a classroom sitting, you know, with our books open, with our nose in our books. We go over there and we sit and we talk. Thank you.
The topics range from history to modern life.
Stuff like drinking or premarital sex, I can even talk to Lillian about, and that really surprised me.
With Anne, I don't feel like I have to be careful what I say.
A class that taught students about themselves and each other.
I don't look at her as being 60 years older. I look at her as being a really good friend and somebody that I can trust and confide in.
Signing up to write memoirs and creating friendships that bridge the generations. Jim Avila, NBC News, Chicago.
And that is NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. Thanks for watching. I'm John Siegenthaler in New York, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night.